welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about simultaneous linear equation. So what's really a simultaneous linear equation? It's a kind of equation, okay? It's a type of equation. In our previous videos, we talked about the linear form of an equation. And then today's video, we are going to be talking about the simultaneous linear equation. So as the name implies, by definition, simultaneous linear equation is an equation which involves solving more than one linear equation in order for us to look for more than one variable. Alright, so what that means is that I have two linear equations to make up a simultaneous equation, meaning that I have to solve these two linear equations simultaneously. I'm solving them the same time, alright, in order for me to look for two variable solution, which means that in simultaneous equation, I'm to obtain two solutions. And then these two solutions I'm obtaining are for two different variables, which is x and y. And it can also be x, y, and z, as the case may be. Alright, so for example, if we have x plus y equal to 1, alright, 1, and then we'll have 2x plus y equal to 2. This is an example of a simultaneous linear equation. Alright, it's an example of simultaneous linear equation because if you check very well, the powers of the variables there are 1. And then if you check very well, just like from the definition I gave earlier, you see that we have two variables here. We have x and then we have y. So in this case here, we are going to be solving, we are going to be looking for the solution of x, and then we are going to be looking for the solution of what? Of y. We are going to be looking for the solution of y. So in this case, what we'll do is, when we come across such solution, we either eliminate either of the variables, so we can be able to solve for one of the variables, then before substituting and then looking for the other variable. Alright, so which brings us as method of solving simultaneous equation. So we have various methods of solving simultaneous equation. Alright, so we have the first one. We have the simultaneous equation solution by substitution. Alright, so that's the first method. You can either use substitution method to solve for simultaneous equation. You can also use the elimination method to also solve for a simultaneous linear equation. And then you can also use the graphical method to also solve for the simultaneous linear equation. Alright, so the first one I called the substitution method. And then the second one is the elimination method. So these are the two major methods you can use to solve for a simultaneous linear equation. Right? So when you see a simultaneous linear equation, the first thing that comes to your mind is what kind of method am I using? Alright? If you use either of these methods, you automatically get the same answer. So it will be left for you to choose, or maybe it will be dependent on the exam you are writing. Alright? If you are talking about the case of JAMB will not ask you to use any of these methods to solve, alright, because you are not showing working on it. So you just need to provide solution to the problem. If you are talking about WAEC can actually tell you to either use the substitution method and then, or use the elimination method, which brings us to the first one. We are going to be talking about how we can use the substitution method to solve for a simultaneous linear equation, and then how we can apply them. Alright, so let's start with the first one, the substitution method. Alright, so let's bring back our example, this example I gave here. For example, if I have x plus y equal to 1, and then I'm having 2x plus y equal to 2. Alright, so I'm going to use this example to illustrate simultaneous equation substitution method here. So what that means is that in using the substitution method to solve for a simultaneous equation, what I'm going to do is, I'll first of all, if I'm to tackle x first, or maybe y, okay, let's say x here, let's say x. What I will do is to, first of all, I will look for the value of x. And how am I going to look for the value of x? I'm going to arrange it in such a way that every other value, every other expression here will be having x. Just like if I'm starting from this point, you can either start from equation 1 or maybe equation 2, depending on how it suits you. Right, so if you're talking about equation 1, it means that if I make x a subject of the formula, I'm going to be having 1 minus y. It means that if I substitute 1 minus 1 to anywhere I have x, you see that this second equation will become uniform in terms of y. Likewise for x. If I make y here subject of the formula, this will go over here, then it becomes 1 minus x. So if I substitute 1 minus x to this place, I'm going to have this expression to be uniform in terms of x. So that's just all about the substitution method of solving a simultaneous equation. Alright, so we are going to be taking a sample problem under this method, so we can be able to illustrate what I'm talking about. Right, so we'll be taking some jump pass questions here. Alright, so we'll be taking some jump pass questions. Let's take this example. Alright, so the question says, solve the simultaneous equation. Solve the simultaneous equation. And then we are given 3x plus 5y equal to 4. And then we are also given 4x plus 3y equal to 5. And then this is a jump pass question. And then we have several options here. This is jump pass question for the year 1982. This question 38. Right, so this question 38 jump. So we're using this jump pass question to illustrate this point. And I'm going to write down the options here. So after solving, we will know if we are correct or not. So following this question, we have the first option to be minus 13 over 11 as the value of x, and then 1 over 11 as the value of y. And then we have option B. For the value of x, we have 13 over 11. And then for the value of y, we have 1 over 11. And then for option C, for the value of y, we have 13 over 11. Value of x, we have minus 1 over 11. Then for D, we have the value of x to be 11 over 13. And then 1 over 11. And then lastly, for the value of x in E, we have 13, and then the value of y to be 11. Right, so this is a typical jump pass question, and then we are going to be solving this question. Alright, so let's start from bringing back our question. Alright, so the question was 3x, right, plus 5y equal to 4. And then we also have 4x plus 3y equal to 5. So from this problem, we can give this and then call it equation 1. And then we can also call this equation 2. We can call this equation 2. Alright, so in this case, what you are going to do first, just like I explained earlier, you can start with either equation 1 or equation 2, depending on how it suits you. Alright, you can also decide to look for x first, and you can also decide to look for y first. depending on how it suits you. Right, so I will be taking equation 1 first. So from equation 1, this is my equation 1, which is 3x plus 5y equal to 4. So what I'm going to do here is either I make y the subject or I make x the subject. So I will have to choose. All right, I'll have to choose. So I want to make x the subject of the formula. If I make x subject of the formula, I'll be having 3x first of all to be 4. If 5y crosses, it changes to minus 5y. Right? So if I make x here subject, I'll be having x to be equal to 4 minus 5y over 3. Alright, so we can call this equation 3. The reason why we did this is for us to be able to substitute x to equation 2. To substitute x to equation 2, so we can be able to get the value of y. Right, so we want to get the value of y here. Right, so what we'll do now is from equation 2, we are going to substitute equation 3 to equation 2. Alright, we are going to substitute equation 3 to equation 2. Now note this, if you are making use of equation 1 first, like from here I used equation 1, and I said 3x plus 5y equal to 4, which is equation 1. And after getting your expression shouldn't be substituted to that same equation, but rather you have to substitute it to the next equation. Alright, what that means is that since I used 3x plus 5y equal to 4 as my first equation I'm using, so meaning that if I should make x subject of the formula from that first equation I used, if I'm to substitute x, I won't substitute it back to that same equation, but rather I will make use of the next equation, which is this. Alright, I'll make use of the next equation, which is this. So what that means is that I'm going to substitute x to equation 2. Right, so substituting equation 3 to equation 2. So if you do that, I'll be having 4 here. So now we've known the value of x, we've known the expression for x, which is this. So just take the whole of this and then we'll substitute it here. So if you do that, we'll be having 4 minus 5y over 3. Then bracket close. Then I have my plus 3y equal to 5. Right, so I'm going to open this bracket. If you observe very well from this equation now, we've expressed everything in terms of y. Alright, look at the first equation we had x and then y. Alright, and then from this other equation, after various substitution, we have expressed everything in terms of y. So if you observe here, this is y and then this y. It means that we can now look for the value of y from this expression. So if I open this bracket, I will be having 4 times 4 is going to give us 16. This 16, right? 4 times minus 5y is going to give us minus 20y. And I have over 3 here, plus 3y equal to 5. Equal to 5. So I'm going to take LCM. If I take LCM there, so taking LCM, I'll be having that expression to be, my LCM there is 3. Alright, it's 3. Okay, so 3 cancel 3 here, we have 1. So 1 times the whole of this expression is going to give me back that expression, 16 minus 20y. 16 minus 20y. Then don't forget this over 1 here. That's over 1. So 3 divided by 1 is going to give me 3. Then multiplied by 3, which is going to give me plus 9y. Alright? Then equal to 5. So from here I can now cross multiply. If I cross multiply, if I cross multiply, I'll be having this, be multiplying this. So I'll be having 16 minus 20y plus 9y, right, equal to 15. Equal to 15. Because 3 times 5 will give us 15. Right? 3 times 5 will give us 15. So I'll be having minus 20y plus 9y equal to 15. So if I cross 16 over, I'll be having minus 16. Minus 16. So minus 20y plus 9 here will give you minus 11. And then don't forget that we have minus 20y plus 9y. So it means minus 20y plus 9y will give us minus 11y. So it's going to give us minus 11y equal to, so this is going to give us 15 minus 16 to be giving us what? Minus 1. So if I divide both sides by 11, I'll be having, if I divide both sides by 11, I'll be having minus 11y over minus 11 equal to minus 1 over minus 11. Right, so this will cancel out this. I'll have my y to equal to, if this cancels out this, I'll have 1 over 11. So that's the value of y. So next up here, we are going to be substituting the value of y to either of these equations. Anyone that suits you, you can decide to substitute it there. Alright? So let's use equation 1. So substituting the value of y. So in substituting the value of y into, so we are using equation 1 into equation 1. So what we are going to be having is, so I want to leave this question. So what I will do is, okay, let me use it. I still have a question there. So let me just leave the options here. Alright, so in substituting the value of y, which is 1 over 11, into equation 1, I'll be having, my equation 1 here is 3x plus 5y equal to 4. Meaning that the value of y, sorry, the value of x is what we are looking for now. So I'll be having 3x plus, alright, 5 into, my y here becomes 1 over 11. 1 over 11 equal to 44. Sorry, this 4, sorry. Equal to 4. And so this is the new expression I'm going to be having. So this becomes 3x plus 5 times 1 is giving me 5. Half over 11 equal to 4. Equal to 4. So if I take my LCM here is 11. So this is over 1. Right? So 11 divided by 1 here will give me 11. Then 11 times 3 will give me 33. So I have 33x. 33x plus, so 11 cancels 11 here will give me 5 equal to 4. Equal to 4. So I'll be leaving this option here and I'll be making use of this space. So let me just clean. Let me clean this point. So I'll be having 33x plus 5 equal to 4, then over 11. Right, so if I cross multiply, I'll be having 33x plus 5 equal to 44. Because 11 times 4 is giving me 44. Alright, so we can make x subject here. Before we do that, this becomes 33x equal to 44. Right, so plus 5 will cross to become minus 5. So we'll be having 33x equal to 44 minus 5 gives 39. Right, gives 39. So if I divide both sides by 33, divide both sides by 33. If I divide both sides by 33, I'm going to be having x to equal to 39 over 33. So if you punch 39 over 33 in your calculator, you have 13 over 11. So it means that the value of x is 13 over 11. So it means that my x is equal to 13 over 11, and then my y is equal to what? 1 over 11. So I'm going to go back to that option, and then we are going to check. Right, so I have x to be 13 over 11, which is 13 over 11, and then I have my y to be 1 over 11, which is 1 over 11. So option B becomes the answer to that problem. Alright, option B becomes the answer to that problem. Right, so that's just an illustration about substitution method. Alright, so we are still going to use the same example. We'll still use the same example to illustrate the elimination method of solving the simultaneous equation.